So I was asking God, and I was reading my daily portion. I was reading through different scriptures, trying to find what is that you want me to speak. Should I continue where I left before, which is, if you remember, what was the last thing I spoke about? Hannah, yes. And then I felt, should I continue that, and I kept reading the portion after Hannah gave birth. I kept reading other portions as well. But this stuck me, and I stumbled upon this passage in Exodus chapter 32. This morning we are looking at Exodus chapter 32. And the title for today's sermon, I have put it as The Temporary God When Belief is Short-Lived. The temporary God when belief is short-lived. If you turn your Bibles to Exodus chapter 32, we'll read from verses 1 to 14. I'll read. If you do not have a Bible, that's fine. Just pay attention. When the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back down the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. "Come on," they said, "make us some gods who can lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow, Moses, who brought us here from the land of Egypt." So Aaron said, "Take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me." And all the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. Then Aaron took the gold, melted it down, and molded it into a shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, "O Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Aaron saw how excited the people were, so he built an altar in front of the calf. Then he announced, "Tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord." The people got up early the next morning to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings. After this, they celebrated with feasting and drinking, and they indulged in pagan revelry. The Lord told Moses, "Quick, go down the mountain. Your people, whom you brought from the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. How quickly they have turned away from the way I commanded them to live. They have melted down gold and made a calf, and they have bowed down and sacrificed to it. They are saying, 'These are the gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt.' Then the Lord said, 'I have seen how stubborn and rebellious these people are. Now leave me alone so my fierce anger can blaze against them, and I will destroy them. Then I will make you, Moses, into a great nation.' But Moses tried to pacify the Lord and he said, 'O Lord,' he said, 'why are you so angry with your own people, whom you brought from the land of Egypt with such great power and strength, or strong hand? Why let the Egyptians say, their God rescued them with the evil intention of slaughtering them in the mountains and wiping them from the face of the earth? Turn away from your fierce anger. Change your mind about this terrible disaster you have threatened against your people. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You bound yourself with an oath to them, saying, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven, and I will give them all of this land, and I have promised your descendants, and they will possess it forever." Verse 14. Now the Lord changed his mind about the terrible disaster he had threatened to bring on his people. Chapter 32 begins with a conjunction, which means there's a clause to look at. Some stories that are essential for us to understand the present narrative that we just read. So what is the clause? You can rewind this narrative by a few chapters and you'll find a conversation that is taking place between God and Moses. In fact, it's not just Moses, it's more than Moses. There are few other people mentioned in this. If you open your Bibles to Exodus chapter 24, you would notice there are 4 different characters along with 70 elders or 70 people that were there back then. I love the content that is mentioned in Exodus chapter 24 because this is the first time in the Bible they use this phrase. There they saw the God of Israel. It's not just one, it's not just two. They saw the God of Israel. Verse 11 says, and though these nobles of Israel gazed upon God, he did not destroy them. In fact, they ate a covenant meal, eating and drinking in his presence. Isn't that a beautiful experience for people to have, sitting in God's presence? There were 74 people in total that ascended to this mountain. They went there and they met God. They were gazing upon his face. They were looking at him. And they had a meal. In fact, the Bible goes as far as saying that it did not destroy them. They had a covenant meal. And there's a beautiful memory to take back home, to have with us. I'm sure when you have encountered God in your life personally, in some form or the other, the shape that you can call, you remember that. But as time passes by, it fades away. Right after this awesome experience they had, God tells Moses, come up to me on the mountain, stay here, and I will give you the tablets of stone on which I have inscribed the instructions and commands so you can teach the people. Now this is what Moses tells the elders, stay here and wait for us until we come back. Aaron and Hur are here with you. If anyone has a dispute while I am gone or we are gone, consult with them. So he kind of sets up the next level of leadership for them and says, if you have any dispute, if you find something troubling you, or if you want to seek God's direction in your life, these are your leaders. Go up to them. Verse 18, then Moses disappeared into the cloud as he climbed higher up the mountain. He remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Now, in this context is where we have to read chapter 32 of Exodus. When the people saw how long it took Moses to come down from that mountain, they began to gather around Aaron. It was Moses who told them that Aaron is your leader. So if you have any trouble, just go to him. He will help you. He will guide you. So they all gather around Aaron. Would it be safe to assume that the children of Israel were experiencing God's tangible presence through Moses and his exploits? Like they didn't have a direct contact with God. So Moses was like the mediator between them and God was showing all his power using Moses, and Moses was showing it to them. The time they stood near that Red Sea and Moses had to lift his stick and command the sea to split. And it did. They didn't see the God who is in heavens, but they saw Moses through whom God was performing this miracle. And they saw many more exploits time after time that Moses performed, and God used Moses to do it. Also, they were probably returning to their former thought when Moses didn't come back. This guy who miraculously brought us out of Egypt with the help of God is now no longer to be seen. And no one has a clue if he's alive. Also, we can't go up this mountain because he commanded us not to touch it, not to come near it, otherwise we'll die. And maybe, like Moses, the God who brought us out of Egypt has disappeared too. Now we are left to fetch for ourselves. So let's go to the next line of leadership and ask for guidance. Here's the danger we see with the people of Israel. They placed their trust in Moses more than the God of Israel. And the same can be said about some of us. We've placed our trust and belief in a person or a few people in our lives more than the God we serve. And if those people disappear from our lives for a season, we begin to search for a new idol. One writer puts it this way: it was easier to get the people out of Egypt than to get Egypt out of the people. What was their ask for Aaron? What did they ask Aaron for? Come on, they said, make us some gods who can lead us. Now let's use reason for a minute to understand or unpack the statement. They are asking they're asking Aaron to make some gods who can lead them. Isn't that a sensible question to ask? In this scenario, if you go to Aaron and ask him, make us some gods, they're really asking out of maybe genuine heart, maybe genuine reason. We followed Moses because God used Moses all this while to direct our paths. Now Moses is no longer there. So why don't you make some gods who can lead us along the way? But a more sensible question would be, was the God who brought us out of Egypt made with hands? Did we make him? So can we make him now? Can we make a new God who can lead us? So what makes them put forward this silly request? Do they really believe that the gods made by Aaron or someone can lead them into their promise? Who led you all the way from being lost in this world to your current state of being saved? Once, this is what we all have the story about. Once we were lost and now we are saved. Who was the one who saved you? Who helped you come out of your painful experiences in life? Who pulled you out of your addictions? Who comforted you when you were grieving? Who healed you when everyone gave up? Who rescued your soul from eternal separation from God? Was he created by your imagination? Was he created by your hands, or was he created by somebody that you know? Then what is this question that we begin to ask? Make us some gods, or will you be my God? In fact, we live in a society where self-sufficiency is the new currency, isn't it? We don't need to create other gods. We are more than capable of creating him or them ourselves. When I read this statement, I am reminded of the scripture in Isaiah chapter 29, verse 13. These people say, they are mine. They honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me, and their worship of me is nothing but man-made rules learned by rote. Through traditions, through practices, through rituals, they have come closer. At least they think they've come closer to God. They think that God is with them. So they sing their praises. They lift their hands. They'll worship God. If they're asked to pray, they'll pray. But their hearts are far away from him. One might say, aren't people being really patient? I mean, come on. Moses doesn't give them a timeline when he goes up the mountain. He doesn't say, I'm going to come back in 40 days. He doesn't give them a timeline. He says, I'm going up. That's it. So they have to wait every single day. Every morning, maybe they're standing at this mountain, at the foot of the mountain, and waiting for Moses to come down. They're stuck there. They're literally sitting there and waiting. When is the way forward for me? Who is going to lead us next? Where should we go next? We've been sitting here for 40 days. There's nothing that's happening. There's no sign of God. There's no indication there's another leader who's leading us. They've been counting days and they've been growing impatient with each passing day. Remember the 70 elders we read about in chapter 24, who went up onto that mountain with Moses and the 4 others or 3 others. What happened to their experience? In fact, they saw God face to face. They had an experience. They had a meal with him, a covenant meal. They sat with him. Where are they now? Why aren't they talking? Why aren't they encouraging the people? Why aren't they pushing the people to believe that God is going to come through? Moses will come down. You know, in the ancient Near East, different regions worshipped the calf or the cow in 2 senses. One, they believed the cow was their fertility god. Number 2, he was the carrier of the warrior god, or they would call Ra. One scholar writes, in Egypt, it was common to worship a calf idol known as Apis. In some cases, a king was depicted seated upon the calf as a way of emphasizing his divinity. Perhaps Aaron's purpose in creating a golden calf was not to create an idol of God, but a platform upon which the invisible God would sit. You see, if your focus is on your miracle, your view of God diminishes. If your focus is on your miracle, the way you view God goes down. He becomes obsolete, and by the end, you make up more gods than you began with to suit your needs. Because you've accustomed yourself to a tangible presence of God or experiences that you've come through. This is how God blessed me with. This is what God blessed me with. These are the things that I can touch and see. These are the blessings I have. So if you get more tangible, if you get more accustomed to these things on earth, then you'll forget about the God who is not visible to your naked eye. So when Aaron is approached to make gods to lead them, Aaron reverts to something he has seen around. In fact, Aaron and Moses go into Egypt to deliver the children, or to bring the children out of Egypt, the children of Israel out of Egypt. So Aaron is looking at all these things that are happening in Egypt. Maybe he might have come across this God, or the carrier of God, called the calf. A familiar character which people might approve of. So when Aaron is approached, make us a God, what is he doing? He's reverting to something which he's familiar with, he's seen. And maybe he's thinking, if I do something like this, people will accept me. People will accept what I present. Verse 5 says, Aaron saw how excited the people were. So he built an altar in front of the calf. In fact, Aaron actually announces, tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord. This is not some other God. The text over here is capital Lord, which means Yahweh. Although he built a calf, they are celebrating for the Lord, the Yahweh, the one who created them, the one who made a covenant with them. But their medium was the calf. All this while, Moses has been the vehicle God used to carry out his plans, which were not seen. He was not seen by the children of Israel. So Moses was the carrier all this while. Now the people are thinking, we need a new vehicle for God, for the God we serve. Because Moses is no longer seen, because God is not using Moses anymore. Maybe he's not there anymore. We need to find some new medium through which God can perform his miracles. God can use things and do. So let's make this calf, which is similar to the one we saw in Egypt. They had a calf. They had their God sit on that calf and ride. So the divine would come and sit in the presence of the created, which means I'm a human. I will make something for God to come and dwell on it or in it, so that I can use it as a medium to move forward in life. If their medium worked in Egypt, why can't it be now? When our patience wanes out, we turn to a familiar ground, isn't it? We wait patiently on the Lord. When we wait patiently on the Lord and nothing happens, what do we turn to? We turn to what is familiar to us. We try to make sense of the things which helped us in the past. And so we begin shaping gods who might lead us into our future, making decisions about our future, whether it's your career, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your life decisions, children. Some of us have earnestly sought God to help us find a job or move companies for better pleasures or better pastures. And when our prayers are answered, like you've been waiting on God and God answered your prayer that he gave you a new job, and you go around telling people how great God is. Bro, I prayed for this for 1 month fasted and prayed, and God gave me a job, and you keep telling about Him. But as time goes by, as new challenges come in, as pressures kick in, we slowly stop talking about the God who gave it to us in the first place. Our dependence on the God who made this provision in our lives is slowly nullified. We work beyond office hours. I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody here. Please don't take offense at it. All I'm trying to say is we rely on our own strength as we begin extending our office hours. We're just trying to prove how dedicated we are to our bosses, to our companies, to things that we work. We rely on our efforts and subtly turn ourselves into a God who can rescue us out of our misery. And if by chance people praise us for a little success we enjoy because of our efforts, we build an altar and begin sacrificing to it day and night. We become self-sufficient and we worship ourselves. All that requires is just a little praise, and we are elated. You did a great job. That's it. That's enough. I would be so pumped up, and I will feel this is all because of me. You did excellent. You spoke very well. You're eloquent. You're energetic. You're multitasker. Those are all good things to say to someone. But the one who's hearing, the one who's taking, if they take it in pride, if they allow that to sink deep within them and pushes them to, boast themselves, they in turn turn those things into God themselves. I remember sharing my story of how I prayed specific prayers when I was living abroad, and then God answered that prayer to the dot. But what I didn't share was the experience that happened with me for the first 6 months. So here's what happened. I worked in the corporate sector for 2 years in India, and then after I moved abroad, I began applying for jobs, right? I was so confident of my skill and my ability, I went applying one after the other, and almost 5 companies that I've interviewed with, I reached the last stage and I couldn't get through. And I didn't understand why. The only reason they gave me was, you don't have experience in the UK. I'm like, how will I get experience if you don't give me a job? And so it went on and on and on. 5 interviews, nothing happened. The 6th month or 7th month is when it dawned on me. Maybe I was too overconfident with my ability. Maybe I was telling myself, I can crack this. I have experience. I have done great work before. So why can't it be done now? So I waited and waited to the point where God made me realize that I should no longer depend on my ability. I have to surrender completely to Him and say, God, if it's your will, give me a job. I don't think I can crack it. I don't think I can depend on all that I have gained in the past, the experiences I've gained in the past. It is only you who can provide. And only after my prayer shifted its focus from me to Him is when He began opening doors. Is when He began showing me that it's not, I cannot rely on my own ability, on my strengths. I cannot make myself a God. And we subtly do that sometimes. We don't realize, we don't sit and tell ourselves, I am a God. No, we don't do that. We are subtly shifting our focus that it is my ability which got me that project. It is my ability which has given me that promotion. It is my ability that is putting our family on a full throttle. There are 2 parts of this story. First, the people ask Aaron to make gods, and he does what he knows. He's wanting to please the people. You need to be cautious when this happens to you. People might come asking you for guidance. They might ask you for direction. They might ask you to help fulfill their desires that they have. And if you're not careful enough, you might end up creating a golden calf based on your own habits, based on your own experiences. You might tell them to rely on their own strength. You might ask them to follow certain traditions which you have followed before. Or even worse, you might go to the extent of asking them to follow you. The role of a high priest, according to Hebrews chapter 5 verse 1, for every high priest chosen from among men is appointed to act on behalf of men in relation to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. In Numbers chapter 18 verse 1, this is what the role of the high priest was given to Aaron and his sons. You and your sons and your family are to bear the responsibility for offenses connected with the sanctuary, and you and your sons alone are to bear the responsibility for offenses connected with the priesthood. It was a very critical, crucial position in which Aaron was standing. Any sin they committed, it would fall on Aaron. It's not on them. Of course, they would get punished. But who is being accounted for? It is Aaron. Aaron would be held responsible. What did you do? Did you intercede for them? Did you correct them? Did you guide them in the right path? No. For all the fathers, for all the mothers, the elder brothers and sisters, for all those people who mentor, in fact, for all those people who have a certain responsibility or leadership over others, how would you respond when people come to you asking for direction? What are you doing with your priestly responsibilities? How are you guiding them? Where are you leading them? In verse 7 of Exodus 32, God intervenes. Lord told Moses, "Quick, go down the mountain. Your people whom you brought from the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. How quickly they have turned away from the way I commanded them to live. They have melted down gold and made a calf, and they have bowed down and sacrificed to it. They're saying, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt.' Then the Lord said, 'I have seen how stubborn and rebellious these people are. Now leave me alone so my fierce anger can blaze against them and I will destroy them. Then I will make you, Moses, into a great nation.'" While it's frightening to hear all this that God is saying at that moment, it is also tempting to accept the outcome of God's fury, isn't it? I mean, look at the deal that God is making to Moses. 1, he'll destroy all these people who rebelled against God. 2, he'll make Moses into a great nation. There's a catch. There's a tricky question that God has put, or a dilemma that God is leaving Moses with. If you accept, I'm going to destroy these people and I'll turn you into a promised nation, into a nation that will inherit the promised land. Some of us might jump right in and say, "God, I too feel sorry for these people, but I don't have any more patience more than you do. I mean, I tried leading them in the right paths and they kept choosing what was worse for them. Do you remember how they questioned my authority when I first saw them? And then when they were hungry and thirsty, how they didn't respect my leadership. They tried throwing me or killing me. I guess you're right, God. Maybe you should destroy these people if your plan is to make me into a great nation. I've been following you all my life, so it would totally make sense if my descendants are taking that promised land. At the very first opportunity, we'll want God to punish people who do wrong. It's easy to forgive people who are outside your family. It becomes hard to forgive people within your family if they've hurt you. And sometimes I find this in Christendom where if a believer commits a wrong, instead of us interceding for them, instead of us caring for them, instead of us loving them, we desire that they be punished and be shown the righteousness of God or the right paths of God. We want to see first their punishment and only then they should come into repentance. Maybe that's, if you're sitting here with that kind of heart, I would encourage you to turn away from it. At the very first opportunity, we'll want God to punish people who do wrong. And rightly so, one has to bear the consequences of the actions or choices they make. If a person is driving on the road, imagine for a moment, and they come to a signal, there's a stop line, there's a red signal, what would you do? Would you go forward or would you stop? The choice that you have to make is you can follow the rules or break the rules. The consequence of breaking the rules is you will be penalized, and worse, you might hit another vehicle. You might die, you might get hurt. The consequence of your choice is already there. So choose wisely. What would you do when you face such a dilemma as Moses faced? Would you want God to punish the ones who did wrong and benefit out of their misery? What did Moses do? Moses did a phenomenal job in this. In fact, it resembles what Christ has done for you and me on this earth. It's a foreshadow of what Christ was going to do. Moses did that. 11, verse 11. But Moses tried to pacify the Lord, his God. O Lord, he said, why are you so angry with your own people whom you brought from the land of Egypt with such great power and a strong hand? Why let the Egyptians say their God rescued them with the evil intention of slaughtering them in the mountains and wiping them from the face of the earth? Turn away from your fierce anger, change your mind and about this terrible disaster you have threatened against your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You bound yourself with an oath to them, saying, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven, and I will give them all of this land that I have promised to your descendants, and they will possess it forever. You see his prayer? He was offered a beautiful role. I will destroy these people. They're rebellious. They're not listening to me. For every opportunity they get, they're running away from me. They're going to the idols. They're making their own gods. But you, I think I find you faithful. You've been coming to church regularly. You've been coming to every service that was there. You're really faithful. I think I should punish them and not you. And I will give all the promises to you. What was Moses doing? No. God, that's not how it should be. Could you please forgive them? Could you please bring them back into your fold? Do you remember the covenant you made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? It's not that God doesn't remember. It's not that God is not knowing what he's doing. He exactly knows what he's doing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent Christ to earth to intercede for you and for me, to die for you and for me. Moses was actually put on the spot. It was a test of his leadership too. Test of his character. What would Moses choose when given this opportunity? What would you choose? What will you do? Would you pray for people who are hurting? Would you pray for people who are sinning? Would you pray for people that dislike you and have gone to choose the wrong paths? Even as the worship team comes. What is your response? How do you respond to these challenges? Number one, when patience weans out, when you don't see God move in your life for a long time, what is your response? How do you respond to that? Do you go about making your own gods? Do you start believing in yourself? Do you start running to things that would please you, that would fulfill your desires? Or do you wait on God, who is working patiently in your life, who is turning you into a vessel that He wants to mold and use in His kingdom? Each one of you, each one of us are precious in His sight. But for the character to come out, the character to be built, it needs time. Overnight, nobody becomes a saint, but He will turn you into one if you're patient with His process. And when you're given an opportunity to intercede for people, when you're given an opportunity that I will elevate you, I'm going to destroy them, run to God like Moses did.